What is the value of being an everyday man of great courage and strength? What about his life is important or unusual? What does it mean for us when the notable achievements of the common soul are lost in time? What is the importance of the stories of men and women who do not appear in the pages of history books? They came from cities and towns all across America. Then they were children, boys and girls thrust into the service of a country that hung in the balance. They were suddenly responsible for survival, tangible and intangible, of families and of freedom, of neighbors and of liberty. Now they are our relatives, our grandmothers and grandfathers, our neighbors. We might find them anywhere. These were the writers of history and legend. Together they wove a narrative of events that defined a generation. They constructed a tapestry that shaped the course of the future of their world. Their pictures do not appear in our textbooks. Their stories do not adorn history as we know it. Yet theirs is the truest narrative of the past. They are a particular people. They are a definite voice. They are relics of time gone by. Their stories cannot be spoken in the objective, detached voice of the annals of war. One such man is William Wilson. I call him Grandpa. This is his story. It is a real story, a true story. It is the account of one man who lived.
Well, I accepted Christ whenever I was 13 years old at the Milburn Methodist Church in Kentucky. I went to Sunday school and church from the time I was, I guess, shortly after I was born, and I always had a longing to be a Christian. And my mother had died when I was 3, and I had a sister that was 10 years older than I was that did a lot of the raising, as well as my Uncle Ben, who came to take care of some of the cooking and the eating, what have you, chores, and after my mother died. So I had a faith to start out with. Well, I feel like somebody had to be in charge of it, because what we saw of the people and the things that had happened to the people, and one of the prison camps, American prison camps, where they had our 1,200 of our soldiers in camp, and the way they were treated, I think the good Lord must have looked upon us. And also the Russian end of fighting over there, and the end result, that Hitler's people were crushed. I think the good Lord was in charge of it. It wasn't all just because we were Americans either. There was lots of people involved in it: the British, the French, the underground, and the Russians. And we met the Russians up on the Baltic Sea 3 days before the end of the war. We thought it was for our country, for our freedom, and because the reason that I went into service, because I thought that I should do my part. I could have stayed out. I volunteered to go into the Army. I didn't have to at that time, but I thought that that was my duty, that I should go in. I wasn't any better than anybody else, that I should actually go and join. started out as a foot soldier and with a mechanized cavalry, and started out in Holland in our first engagements that we had. We was guarding the Siegfried line up toward Aachen, Germany, and we were there whenever the Germans decided to make their final push to go through back and push us back and get into their last, I guess, attack that they would really make against our forces. And we were just there guarding and patrolling, and of course I joined the 7th Army Cavalry there, and the land is so low there that our tanks would just mire down in the mud, and German tanks were wide track tanks, and theirs wasn't. So we lost a lot of our equipment during this period of time just because of that. And this is really where we first started our first engagements with the Germans. Being in the first battle that I was in France, all the artillery shells flying over you, and I think that you're looking to the good Lord to take care of you, because it's a scary expense for you to have to go through. And I think it's where I first started losing my hearing. The only thing that was bad about it was our own artillery shells that were shelling, and they wasn't at the Germans. Well, I think having to lay out during the war, in January, we lay out 5 weeks. Whenever the snow was about 2 foot deep and foxholes, your feet would freeze in the mud at night. Whenever you was trying to rest, you had to take socks, put them around your body to keep them warm, and change every 2 or 3 hours. If you didn't, your feet would freeze. And I still have a problem with this today. That the reason I'm in Texas is because I don't want to go back to where the snow is, and I still don't like cold weather, because it has, I think, an emotional effect on me to get cold. You just get where you're uncontrollable, and your feet gets cold. They just feel like that they're dead, they're starved. And many of the guys lost their feet, toes, and what have you because of this during this period of time of laying out in the mud and the snow and the rain. It was and also we were cut off from our supply of food, and we didn't have rations of any kind. And I guess the worst thing was having to steal or kill anything that we could find to cook and to eat during this period of time. In fact, one of the times that we were on patrol, we were just really out trying to find something to eat, that we run across the Germans, and they had a foxhole and had sauerkraut, potatoes, all of that to eat. Well, we run them off. We didn't kill them, but they took off, and we got all of their food for the company for about a day or two off of this. And it was a real good time and gratifying for all of us to find something to eat. It was during this period of time that we were stationed in Holland that the Germans made their push through. We were moved about 2 o'clock in the morning. They were called our platoons and our outfit, mechanized cavalry, to move some 165 miles non-stop towards Belgium, where the Germans started their attack. And during this period of time that I first saw the Germans, and the first time that we were actually in combat. And it was there that we were patrolling whenever the Germans attacked during this St. period of time. I went in one night on guard about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and about 7 o'clock I was supposed to be relieved. But during this period of time, no one came out to relieve me. Well, I drove the Jeep back into St. Vith, and there was Germans where there used to be Americans, and all of the Americans were gone and the tanks were pulling out, and I was left on duty guarding. So I got into the line with the Jeeps that was leaving and all the tanks, and there's where I had a little resentment against my own people, because I was left just a hanging by myself and didn't know where I was or where we were supposed to be going. You know, during this period of time that the tanks were so close together, and I was driving a Jeep, that the one tank went right over the top of the one I was driving, and I was able to jump from the hood of my Jeep onto the back of the next tank, and that was all that the way that I got by with being crushed by our own tank. During this period of time, up ahead, well, I could see where the Germans had their artillery going, and they knock out every tank, so many tanks, they'd knock one out. And I spent the night on top of that tank until the next morning. And of course, no one would pay any attention to me banging on the tank, because they afraid maybe I was a German too. And I had a little resentment, I'm afraid, of course, toward my own people, because of being left up there on my own. And I had one more experience during this period of time after we were being chased by the Germans. The captain called me, told me he had 3 litter cases that had to go back to the hospital. There was no way they could treat them in the field. They didn't have the proper care for them. They was going to die. So he told me, "You're the only thing that's going to keep them boys from dying." So I started out on a journey that, not knowing where I was going for sure, and not knowing how I was going to get there, because I knew that we were surrounded, had been for some few days. And it started out almost dark. I started out with this strapped on the Jeep. And the first river I went to cross, I heard the machine gun click, and I knew it was, and they wanted to know what the password was. I told them I have no idea what the password might be. I hadn't heard one. We hadn't talked to anyone in several days from anybody that we knew. And so the airborne people let us through, and I got into the main hospital in Belgium about 10:30, 11 o'clock that night. I had no idea what day it was or really where I was. And then I got these into the hospital. I was grilled by the G2 people for what had happened, where we had been, how things had gone. And I got up, and the next morning, it was Christmas morning, 1944. The sun came out, and the American planes started bombing the Germans, and it was a grateful day for me to remember where I was and on the Christmas Day in 1944. If there was some detail to do, I was always one of the first ones that got to volunteer. And I had one friend that was an Indian, and one from down south, Jake Payne and Victor Walking Eagle, were two of my friends that I fought with and went on many patrols with, and I had a special attachment to them. Now, Victor Walking Eagle was an Indian, and he had one problem. He liked to drink, and whenever he drank, he was a crazy person. But whenever it come to fighting, he was the one that you wanted by your side, because he had no fear of nothing and no man. And I would still like to know if he's living today, but I have no way of really knowing. And I guess you do have some attachments that you make, and some that you wouldn't care if you ever saw them again. Because I thought that whenever I started out, I thought that we was going to fight an enemy that I didn't even know, people that I didn't even know. But after meeting these people and entering the service, going overseas, well, I found out they were people just like me. Some of them farmers, some of them that just trying to make a living. This is one of the hardest things there is, because to see the people, innocent people, see the people, and later on, during the end of the war, where there was boys, 12, 14 years old, being killed, and our outfit tried not to kill. We captured many, many, many Germans, and I never did feel it was right to kill without, unless you were someone was trying to kill you. Because I still believe that this is the way that God would want someone to act. I like the German people, and we guarded the German prisoners after the war was over, and even during before the war was over. That was one of our jobs. We captured many thousands of them. And overall, I like the German people as well as I did any that we went across. I lived with the people in Belgium. I lived with the people in France. And of all the people that I met, I think the Germans a lot of them were farmers, and that's what I was whenever I went into the service. And I thought a lot of them. I don't think it changed my faith a lot. I promised the good Lord a few things, and I'm still doing it today, that I would serve Him the best that I could, and I would teach my family the best that I could, and I appreciate my country that I live in, and I still have that faith today, and I sure don't would hate to have that. Someone asked me, what would you like to go back in again? I said, I wouldn't take $1 million for what I've got, but I wouldn't take $1 million to go back to do any of it anymore, because it's something that I remember, and it's something that is very close to me and to a lot of the people that I served with. And I only have about 2 that I hear from that are still alive. There's many of them that's dying every day, and I'm glad to be a spokesman for them
I
and for
am
what they went
biased.
through too.
I have a particular tendency and inclination towards viewing this man as a hero. He is distinguished in courage and ability to me, not merely because he served his country like so many others. I hope I am lacking in our world today. I choose a hero that represents what I hope to be. A man I hope is myself. He would deserve this. He would say he deserves no special recognition. However, this is my tribute to ordinary people. Ordinary people who do extraordinary things. This is Lindsay Nicole Chance Simmons, granddaughter of a hero.